Okay, let's go ahead and get the meeting started, please. Call the meeting to order. Okay, are you ready? Lisa?
I apologize, Madam Chair.
Chris, are you ready to read? The delegations now.
At this time, we will begin with our delegation portion of the work session. I'm going to read the delegation statement once. Of course, it applies to anyone that is speaking or before the board. Thank you for your interest in addressing the Hamilton County Board of Education. During your presentation, please address the board as a whole, not individual board members or administrators. Also, please do not present complaints or concerns you have about an individual employee of the school system. If you wish to voice those complaints and concerns, you should contact the central office and ask for a meeting with the superintendent, since the superintendent is responsible for individual employees. Please limit your remarks to 5 minutes. I will tell you when you have 1 minute left. You may begin when you're ready. Delegations listed are Courtney Fugit. Okay. Speaking regarding whole child advocacy. Tennessee Code annotated 490603115.
I'm not a public speaker, so bear with me. My name is Courtney Fugit. I'm an 8th grade teacher and a mom of 2 boys, one of whom is in 3rd grade. I'm here today to request the school board pass a resolution to the General Assembly to urge them to amend the new 3rd grade retention law. As you know, this law bases promotion to 4th grade on one single standardized test. I don't think that I have to explain the negative effects that this will have on teachers, students, and families. I believe we're all on the same page there. I also want to make it clear that I fully understand you all had nothing to do with the creation of this law and that you do not have the power to amend it. I've been working with an organization, Statewide Organizing for Community Empowerment, and they encouraged us to reach out to our boards and see what we can do together to show state legislators that we don't believe this new law is in the best interest of students. Retention should be based upon all school district information on each student, not on just one single test. Rather than focusing on TCAP scores, legislators should be advocating for evidence-based assessments and learning solutions for our students, grounded in good data and the real-life experiences of teachers. Legislators should focus on providing skills-based reading intervention for K through 2nd grade students, hiring more support staff, increasing teacher pay, and partnering with community agencies to meaningfully address student and staff mental and physical well-being. 10 Tennessee school boards have passed resolutions, and 5 others are in the process of passing resolutions to urge the General Assembly to amend the law so that it allows districts to make retention decisions based on individual student data. And I propose that the next county to do that should be ours. My son, who has ADHD, can read any book you give him and effectively summarize what he has read. And he should not be required to repeat 3rd grade because of distractions in the testing environment. Someone sharpening their pencil or acting up during the test should not have an impact on whether he gets to go to 4th grade. It's true that there are students who really are struggling readers, but we also have to keep in mind that March 2020, the month that the world shut down, was during our 3rd grade students' kindergarten year. They've not had effective reading supports in place for most of their school years up to this point, and they shouldn't be penalized for that. Parents, teachers, and students in Hamilton County need to know that our school board supports students and not the new retention law. Please consider passing a resolution to urge the General Assembly to amend the new law before it's too late. Thank you so much for your time and the opportunity to be heard. I really do appreciate it. If you have any questions, I am happy to provide answers to the best of my ability. None?
Can you give us a list of the counties that have?
I can.
That would be good. I think we've gotten one email from you, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So
Yeah,
the ones who have already passed are, I'm not sure the actual school board, like the
Yeah.
school, I just know the county.
Right.
Alcoa, Anderson, Williamson, Weakley, Lynchburg, Robertson, Wilson, Warren, Sullivan, and Blount County. And then those who are in process are Athens, Davidson, Knox, Franklin, and Hamblin.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And Rhonda, could I add something? So, just to maybe clear your conscience a little bit, at our state school board association meeting in November, there were 19 resolutions to do away with this from different organizations, from different school boards. So it's not just there, it's the whole state looking to change this.
I
So-
thought so too, and I just, I think it's important though that our community knows
Right.
that you guys feel that way as well.
Right, yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
Ma'am,
sorry.
excuse me, if you have an electronic copy of your statement that was made, would you please send that to each of us? Thank you.
Okay, I guess we're ready for the presentation. Dr. Drake. Dr. Drake, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, board, and thank you for the opportunity to present the updates to our educational equity plan. Here's our just cause, and for all students, all children to thrive and experience a future without limits here in Hamilton County. I'd like to take the opportunity to discuss with you the path to equity, Hamilton County's path to equity. In March of 2021, the then board passed unanimously an educational equity policy, which charged me with developing an educational equity plan. And in doing so, with that plan, we leaned in heavily on our Tennessee Educators Playbook, Leaders for Equity Playbook, in developing that plan. We used that as a guide. And with that guide, we developed a 3-year educational equity plan to implement here in Hamilton County Schools. Our why is just that in our district we have, I'm pretty sure you all have seen this slide, where we have 70% of our students that are in our subgroups. And these are historically underserved subgroups there. And that 70% of our students, that's over 28,000 of our students. And I just need to point out, I know you've seen this slide, but those students are not just in our urban core. Those students are across our district. And so we know that if there's not an intentional focus on our underserved students, that we're not going to be able to meet the needs of all of our students. And so this statement is written throughout our plan 10 times. So now at this time, I want to take the opportunity to go over our goals that we had set for year 1. And in going over those goals, I'm also going to point out some of the accomplishments so that you will also know some of the equity work that's being done within our district. So year one, goal 1 is reducing disproportionate suspension and expulsion rates. And this plan was written to align with our Future Ready 2023 strategic plan. And so within this first goal to reduce disproportionate suspension and expulsion rates, we had several next steps. And of those next steps within this goal, 6 have been completed, 3 are in progress, and 2 are incomplete. I'd like to highlight some of the strategies. So one of them was to build data capacity. Our principals were used to looking at the data and making academic decisions. And so we added the discipline in this so that also when they're looking at this dashboard, they can make decisions around discipline in their building. Another strategy I would like to highlight is the revisions to our COAB, our Code of Acceptable Behavior. We have a COAB that we've been using for several years, but this year, within our COAB, we included an integrated student support framework in that, and so that all of these documents are combined together, and so that there is a continuation of support, student supports here with our Code of Acceptable Behavior. So we have, as well as our schools, 76 of our schools, all of our schools, they actually wrote some really strong Tier 1 plans that support our students with behavior. And I just wanted to really point out an example of how strong and effective those plans are. The data that you're currently looking at is data from Red Bank Middle School. And I'm sure that several of you remember that we had we heard a lot of complaints from teachers and that community at large about the student infractions on last year. So this year, the administration has actually really developed a strong Tier 1 plan for behavior, and you can see that this year the student infractions have decreased there for this first semester. And although those fractions have decreased, it's been pretty consistent as last year with those suspensions. Now, over time, we really strongly believe that as those student infractions decrease, that the out-of-school suspensions will also decrease as well. Year 1, Goal 2 is our embedded cultural competencies in school practices. And here we have 5 goals that we have, 5 next steps that we've completed. We have 5 that are in progress and 2 that are incomplete. But I want to highlight some that we're actually doing, and that is we were to develop cultural walks that we do, walkthroughs through the school where we actually go and listen to the student interactions among students, student interactions among the adults, and then we also have focus groups there. So we're actually asking and requesting, asking the students questions where we're getting their voice to make the change so that they have that strong sense of belonging and inclusiveness within their schools' buildings. And then another strategy I'd like to highlight is that the equity and action committees, and this is where the teacher leaders from this community, that they're using our educational equity plan, and they're holding meetings within their learning community to help make sure that the equity goals are being, that they're actually being introduced to the teachers, and that the teachers are following this educational equity plan. Goal 2, another strategy I'd like to highlight is our student success plans. We have been pleased with the work that we're doing there in developing those plans. We have 19,000 plans that we have written this year in 42 schools, and in January we will have 44 schools where these plans have been written. And starting next year, we will have student success planning in all of our schools across the district. And our last goal, our goal 3, allocate resources equitably. And here we had 4 goals that are actually completed, 4 that are in progress, and 4 that are incomplete. I want to highlight one of our strategies here is to increase our diverse teaching staff, to increase that as well as to retain those teachers. So in doing that, we have developed different pathways to get folks into our classrooms, and then once they're here, we have a complete program that supports them in their behaviors, behavioral supports, as well as introducing them to all of the, making the networks and connections throughout those first years of teaching. And then our goal 3, another highlighted strategy, is discovering student interest. So we have worked really hard to listen to what does interest our students and creating different pathways for them. And here we've just highlighted a couple of, well, 3 of them, and one is the opening of our construction center, and then a collaboration with the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga in the development of University High. And then another goal here I'd like to highlight is that our community partners, and this is one that I feel that we're doing exceptionally well. I've listed some of our partners here, but I really want to point out our partnership with 2.0 and the Children's Cabinet that has been developed there. A couple weeks ago, in the closing of an extended stay in East Ridge, whenever we went, we were there and we talked to all of the families and collected the needs that those families actually had. And I really thought that it was amazing that while we were there, we were able to jump on a Zoom call in the middle of the day with the Children's Cabinet and have decision makers that were on there. We presented needs that these folks had at that time, and we were able to actually meet these needs based on those community partners that were on the phone at that particular time. Now, moving forward, we plan to analyze the data from year 1, looking at what we've done well, where we need to accelerate things, and also what needs improvement, as well as compiling our next steps for year 2 and year 3 of our plan, and making sure that they align with our 2030 strategic plan that we're currently developing as well. And then lastly, we're going to continue the collaborative efforts that we have with our equity triangle, which are the other departments and the other champions that we have out here in the district that are focused on equity as well, so that opportunities and access and the whole child support, and to making sure that we align our practices and that we are doing work that better supports our students across the district. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'll answer any questions that you have.
Is yours on, Larry? Okay, go ahead.
Dr. Drake,
Yes.
you say how many schools have developed their own COAB?
No, so we have a COAB for the entire district. So
Yes,
we just
ma'am.
have one COAB.
I'm aware of that.
However, but we have 76 of our schools, all of our schools, have developed Tier 1 Tier 1 plans, which addresses the behavior for our, I'm sure you're familiar with our response to interventions and a tiered approach.
I have a copy right here of
Okay.
East Hamilton Middle School's COAB that a team of teachers, RTI 2B, developed, a leadership team developed at that school.
Mm-hmm.
This is not on the East Hamilton school website.
Okay, and I don't know if I'm, yes.
Just a moment.
Okay.
If you go to Red Bank Middle School and go under either teachers, parents, or students, their COAB goes directly to the district COAB for 2020-2021. So my question is, in the development of these individual schools' COABs, who is responsible for making sure that these independent school-developed Tier 1, Level 1, 2, and 3 responses are vetted to properly align with the school district's COAB? And my one example to you is this.
Okay.
Based upon Hamilton County Middle School's tiered approach, you can have 4 violations, including pushing, shoving, inappropriate language, theft, minor property damage, truancy and technology violations, tardies, dress code violations, disruption, excessive talking, lying, cheating, defiance, disrespect, taunting, horseplay, and inappropriate language. You can have 4 events of this before it would be reported to the administration of the school. So I can completely understand, in my opinion, just knowing what I know now, why our suspensions and expulsions and incident reports have drastically decreased.
So now,
Hold on, so,
That's a big question, and I don't think right now is the time for that. But and I think the rest of this board, I can't speak for them, but mostly, I'll summarize what one parent told the superintendent Thursday night as he made the statement after Principal Childs that they would be held personally responsible for getting to the bottom of our discipline problem, specifically at East Hamilton. But a parent stood up whose daughter in the 6th grade had been assaulted and said, "What are you going to do so that I can go home tonight and tell my daughter that it's safe to go to school?" I would like you and the superintendent, with this plan that you have put forth, to personally go to East Hamilton Middle School and other schools that are experiencing this, and you personally promise that these children are going to be safe at school. Right now, I have no faith that that's going to happen anytime soon. Now, I know that Board Member Black has a discipline committee that will meet in early January and will probably report to this board. But between then and now, I think it's imperative that this district leadership does something about this issue. So I'm not really looking for a response. I just wanted to make a statement because I personally have heard about problems at East Hamilton Middle School and other schools for at least 3 months, longer than that really, ever since I started running for office. I know teachers who have resigned because they don't get proper support. This is a real problem. Please don't, I wasn't going to say anything, but when you come in front of us and say how successful your program has been, I have to dispute that. Mr. Robinson, Superintendent, the latest report on suspensions and expulsions that I can find through the State Board of Education is the school year 2018 and 2019. Do you have available 2020, 2021, or 21 and 22? Does this school district have that yet?
you ready for me to respond?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just making sure. So let me clarify one thing before I'll address the
Okay.
last question. So obviously we realize that we've got work to do around discipline. The example of Red Bank Middle was one that, previous board members or board members that were serving last year recognized we had a lot of parents coming. About Red Bank Middle, we made drastic changes to Red Bank Middle. And to clarify the data that is up there, showing that steps they have taken, they've increased or decreased infractions. The point of showing the suspensions that the suspensions actually have not decreased, right? So you have a leading and a lagging indicator. Essentially what you would want to see is that, as incidents decrease and continue to decrease, that's going to be your leading indicator. And at some point, suspensions ultimately will follow behind. There's a narrative out there that we're not addressing this one issues and we're saying don't suspend. We're using Red Bank Middle as a singular example to show that we are addressing discipline issues. Red Bank Middle has made I would say, drastic turnaround in this first semester because they put in a solid Tier 1 plan and are addressing it consistently. To the question about suspension data, we can give you suspension data for December of 2022. We've got it for every year. What the state reports, that's obviously going to lag behind what we have, but we can provide that to the board as early as tomorrow.
One final question. The school district policy 6.304, I believe that's where it is, says at the end of each school quarter, each building administrator shall send a report summarizing complaints of discrimination, harassment, bullying, cyberbullying, and hazing to the director of schools. So we should have you, or whoever you designated, should have the last 3 reports available. Is that correct?
That's correct. We report to you quarterly on that data.
Okay, I will get with you and ask further questions about that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Larry. Okay, Faye?
Thank you, Dr. Drake. I'm happy to know that infractions are down. What seems to be working?
So within those Tier 1 plans, there are several different measures that schools are using. They are having an advisory period in the majority of our middle and high schools, morning meetings in elementary school, just really checking on the students, having conversations with them about their evening, setting goals for the day. Those type of things that they're actually doing, mindful minutes, and so those are some things that are written within there. Tier 1, really just forming those connections, the adults connecting with the students in the building.
Sounds good. My second question is, at what point are we trying to discover the students' interest before they go on to maybe high school?
Well, so one of the things throughout our cultural walks, whenever we're listening to the voices of the students and having those focus groups, they're telling us some things. They may give us examples of what's going wrong, but then they give us ideas on how they can improve. One of them is we were at Normal Park and we did a walkthrough there, and one of the things that the students wanted, they wanted more opportunities to have clubs there. And so we spoke with the administration there, and so now during their school day, they actually have embedded having those clubs during the day. So we report back to the administration about our cultural walks and give them recommendations, and they're implementing some of those recommendations.
Thank you. I'm glad that's being done.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, Gary?
So just to throw something out there, I met with all my schools last week and talked about discipline and the COAB and different things, and I'm going to throw one area of concern. So Hunter Middle School, Brown Middle School, both talking about positive Tier 1 results, but Brown Middle School threw something out to me. I've started calling to try to help, but their personal positive behavior plan that they set up for Tier 1 has just pretty much bankrupt their ESSER money. So they had students that were doing so well that when they figured out the point values of things, they've pretty much given away their prizes and things. So that's something to keep in mind too. There's these tiers are coming at a cost to the school, and we know the ESSER money. I mean, we're going to have a talk about Tyner. We know ESSER money is fastly being depleted. So if we can start thinking about possible partnerships and stuff for that, especially for the elementary, middle school. High schoolers a little bit tougher. They like, eating lunch with their buddies or, there's things you can offer them that you can't offer elementary and middle school.
Right. Well, and thank you for that. I'll go back. We have done one of our cultural walks at Brown, and I'll make sure that I look through that final report and see some ideas that students gave us, some of their interests that we can implement there. And there may be some that are no cost to low cost there that we could implement.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Marco, I skipped over you. I'm not
Right.
used to my little thing there.
Right here in my heart. So I think the question, and again, I've said this before, perception is reality to those who perceive it that way, right? And oftentimes, two things we don't want to, maybe in narratives we don't want to create. One, it's that you can skew numbers if we ignore it, right? But that is not the narrative. We're not looking to ignore realities. I too have heard from teachers, the perception at least of increased discipline issues, and obviously to a teacher who experienced it, it's truth, right? We've seen in the news the experience of parents who feel things are not in control, and that's true to the parent who deals with an issue directly, right, to them. And so I think in this, perhaps it's just important, and you can give me feedback on that, but it's important to say that we're not trying to find ways to suspend less. We're trying to find ways to improve behavior. We're trying to find ways to encourage character growth. We're trying to find ways to create community and unity inside schools in ways that are supportive to everybody, including the students who are well behaved and show up to school every day and want to learn and want to grow and want to. We've talked about again the needs. Speaking of your comment, Mr. Keene, as early this semester, some point, I got a call from one of our principals because some of the external funding for one of their behavioral partners within the schools was being cut by $30,000, and that meant they were going to lose a support that they had from an external partner. So it wasn't even Hamilton County. It was, and so the call was, do you know anybody who could help fill that need? And the phrase he used, I think I used it then, it's like I was building a house and they just took away the hammer. And the house being built wasn't, ways to change the numbers. It was things that were actually supporting the behaviors, the improvement of behaviors, reduction of real infractions within our schools. And so to that question, maybe I encourage you as you speak of what you're doing to the question that Ms. Robinson asked, what is working? And how is this truly improving the attitudes? I do not dismiss any parent whose child on a bus is bullied. And last year at Red Bank, when I was, we had calls about bullying and buses, calls about bullying. I've been surprised this year how few calls I've gotten in the schools that I've been involved in, but I passed some of those on to Mr. Connor, so maybe he's getting all those calls. But I do think there is a change of heart and attitude, but it really is, school is not, I will push back, I'll get pushback. I don't believe it's only about math, reading, the 3 R's, arithmetic, however we spell that. it is about character, it is about leadership, it is about community, it is about building other things. And unfortunately, as somebody mentioned, many of our students have not been in a normal school year for a long time. And a lot of that's been broken, and some unfortunately are already coming with a lot of that broken into our school system. And a lot of the work we have to do so that they can learn the 3 R's requires building into their characters. So when I look at this, it is not about how do we reduce numbers, it's how do we improve behaviors in such a way that it impacts not only the schools, not only the classrooms, but our community as a whole. So I appreciate it. We would have solved humanity if we would have found the way to fix this all across the board. We often can't get along with our neighbor as is. So I know it's hard, but I appreciate the work. And we do take discipline very seriously. Our schools take discipline very seriously, and misbehaviors have to be dealt with. So I agree with Mr. Groen there that if there are things and it appears that someone keeps getting away with a behavior that disrupts one student, I was a teacher for only 2 years for a reason, one student can completely ruin what you had planned for the day if their behavior isn't worked with, and it can ruin the experience of many other students as well. So thank you.
Okay, I think the problem that I have is not reducing suspension and expulsion rates, it's reducing disproportionate, which tells me that teachers and principals and administrators are having to take certain things into consideration that should not be taken into consideration before you decide to expel or suspend someone, which is totally, in my opinion, should be off the table. Because I know that there are disproportionate, because you mean certain groups of people are being suspended and expelled at a higher rate than others. Well, teachers tell me that they have to be careful who they continue to write up because they're afraid that they will get in trouble because of the disproportionate part of this. I don't know why it has to be disproportionate, why that word has to be in there. If our goal is to reduce suspensions and expulsions, we shouldn't care who they are. If they need to be out of the classroom, they need to be out of the classroom. I mean, I talked to a lot of teachers in the last 20 years over this, and I'm telling you, it hasn't gotten any better. As a matter of fact, in my opinion, it's gotten worse, and I think a lot of that has to do with principals. And I'm not sure the principal getting edict from on high about how they handle things, but I can just tell you that a lot of things are not getting any better. But this paying to behave, you know, call me old-fashioned, but I believe in personal responsibility. You come to school and you behave because your mom and dad pay taxes for you to have a school to go to. I don't think you should have to pay a kid to behave. I don't pay my grandchildren to behave. They don't behave, you know, they get their bottoms spanked, or they go to their room, or they get their technology taken away from them or something, but I don't say, hey, I tell you what, if you mind your mother tonight, I'm going to give you $1. No, that's not how it works. I think we're teaching very, very bad behaviors, because when you go to work, you show up for work, you do the right thing just because you're going to get a payday, and if you don't do the right thing, you don't get a payday. But that's after you start to work. But in schools, you should behave because it's the right thing to do. And we need to be teaching these young people personal responsibility. And I think that's just a whole lot of the problem here. They're not getting taught that. But like I say, this reducing disproportionate suspensions and expulsions, I'm not sure why that's disproportionate is there instead of saying just reduce suspensions and expulsions. Are we going to just suspend more of a certain race to kind of catch up so it doesn't look disproportionate? Are we going to stop? I'm just not sure how you achieve that goal, or what the end game looks like there, because that just is not a good plan. Because no matter what color you are, no matter if you're male or female or whatever you are, if you misbehave in class, you need to be out.
So I agree with you about the beginning. I mean, that's what ultimately we want. And to Mr. Perez's point as well, is like we want to teach character. We want to teach kids how to behave properly. Hopefully the end result of that is that suspensions decrease because behavior's gotten better.
Everybody's.
Right. The disproportionate piece, that's a reporting coming from the state. The state
Well,
gathers that data and
Just
reports
because the
out
state
on it.
doesn't make it right either.
And, you know, what we traditionally, it's not every time, but where we've been dinged the most has more been around exceptional ed students, not necessarily about, you know, there recently has been about our Black exceptional ed students, but we've been deemed more historically just around suspension of exceptional ed students.
I just want to add one thing to what you're talking about. I think one of the opportunities we have when we see that certain groups of our kids are being less successful in school is to kind of take a step back and ask the question of why. And you're contending that some of it is personal responsibility, but also part of this tier 1 conversation we're having is we're really trying to help our teachers and our administrators set up schools that work for everyone. And it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge because each kid comes in with a different need and a different learning style and different approaches. And so some of what you're seeing, I think, and hearing is our attempt to say, hey, we need to continue to build environments and classrooms where every kid can be successful. And when we noticed a certain group of kids aren't being successful in those environments, I think our job is really to step back and say, why is that happening? And what can we do to better support that? And I think what you're hearing from us is our commitment to continue to iterate around that and to develop that so that, to your point, the disproportionality goes down because we're doing a better job of creating environments where kids can be successful. And that's really our goal. It's not to suppress one thing to elevate another.
Caritza?
So I know that when we hear words like disproportionate, once again, those are words that for any of us, I think, are not a word that we want to hear. But the truth of the matter is, and I feel pretty comfortable in saying this from friends that are teachers, friends that are parents of kids, observing my own family and children when I go in buildings, is that there are times, for whatever reason, across these 11 districts now, instead of 9, that there have been cases that I am fully aware of or keen of, and we all have been, where there has not been a consistency in the discipline in the same situation. And when you look at that, the question is why? If all 3 of y'all got caught in the bathroom with a vape, all 3 of y'all should have had the same discipline. And I'm using the vape as an experience now because that's the going thing with the kids, right? They vaping all kind of stuff. It's Jolly Rancher the cannabis. But my point is, if 3 boys, an Asian, a Black child, an Asian child, and a Hispanic child are in the bathroom and they get, I'm gonna say 4, and a Caucasian child, and they get caught in the bathroom, all of them, to me, should get the same punishment. But in some buildings, that will happen, and in some buildings, that will not happen. And so that's when it becomes disproportionate, Rhonda, because we all agree that all 4 of them was vaping, right? So all 4 of them get the same punishment. But I'm telling you, that does not happen.
What's the principal problem?
It's a leadership problem, but that problem is bigger than just the leader decide to do that. I mean, it's deeper than that. And I think this is a conversation for the disciplinary working group because I think it gets detailed. And I think we should possibly table it and talk and just take it on to the conversation in January for that committee, because there are a lot of factors and variables that come into this, right? So it's not just clear cut. It's just not. As much as we would like it to be, it's not. It's just not. And so, like, I get what you're saying about the word disproportionate, but that's what it is. And so the state says that because that's what it is. And so you have to say what it is in order to be able to fix it. Like, you can't address and rectify something if you don't admit what the issue is. Like, it's like being an alcoholic. You gotta admit you're alcoholic before you can move on to recovery. So you gotta admit what's going on. And it is what it is. And I think if we polled a lot of parents, they tell you, if you asked Jeanette's nephew, I'm just gonna say, and my nephew, and they did the same thing, I promise you, one of them gonna tell you their punishment was different. Or it might be your nephew and your nephew, and depending on what school, the punishment might be different. And it's just, I think it's a matter of interpretation sometimes. I think it's a matter of trying to have autonomy in their buildings. I mean, I don't know, it's a whole lot of stuff. But I do think it's a conversation to be had in a disciplinary group, but we're gonna be here to Christmas, because we got a lot going on with discipline in Hamilton County Schools.
Okay, the next one is Larry.
I would definitely support Mrs. Jones in that I think the district has a problem in consistency throughout the district, which is going to need to be addressed at the highest level with all principals and assistant principals. So again, a topic for much further discussion by this board and action by the leadership of the district.
Gary?
All right, so I'm going to throw in administrative areas that I had to experience. So it's not always the same thing, because what you have to also take into consideration, those 4 boys that are in the bathroom that are vaping, has 1 or 2 or 3 already been dealt with for previous things. So that's something that other parents don't get to know. FERPA does not allow you to discuss other kids. So what sometimes is an image of inequity is because just like if you go, to the courts, a judge seeing somebody for the 3rd time versus seeing somebody for the 1st time, they're going to give them a different penalty. But going back to what Rhonda said, right is right and wrong is wrong. But yes, and I will say this, when I had my discussions on the COAB, both middle schools and both high schools said that our COAB has too many options for offenses. They'd like to see it scaled down a little bit. So there's 4, 5, 6 different things for first offense, 4, 5, or 6 different. So that was something that was suggested by all 4, Brown, Hunter, Central, and Harrison Bay, that there was too many options, and they'd like to see it scaled down to fewer, because it's, as they said, it's like an encyclopedia.
Okay, Ben?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So talking a little bit about what Gary said and what Chris just said, I would say that disproportionate is going to be something that we talk about as leadership and continue to talk about as leadership until we've addressed it so it doesn't exist. As long as it exists, we must talk about it. And the only way to do that is for our leadership to continue to talk about it until it's gone.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to the agenda. Is there anything that anyone would like to,
Madam Chair, I just want to
Okay.
bring to attention that we added the Tyner bid
Yeah.
to the agenda, so just, it's
But
in
we're-
red, but just to call your attention.
okay. Okay. Okay, let's see. Okay. Okay, Marco, go ahead.
So on bids, I do want to ask about the increase of the ICMS, and I see you're there, Dr. Brown, of the ICMS bid. I mentioned this with software before. I am familiar with how software works, and once you're in, and once it's got all your data, it's got all your data, and once you're using it and you bought into it, you're in. And so when you sell software on the other side, you make sure to get people in because it basically becomes impossible for them to get out because it carries that. And then you begin to increase costs and prices. And so for me, I want to understand better the $100,000, almost 50% increase to a software. I do also want to point out, and Dr. Brown, you may refer to this, or maybe somebody else on the board, but I do also want to point out that, because I've said this before, recruiting right now around the country for good quality teachers has become incredibly competitive. Because we are all fighting each other for a very small pool of teachers that everybody wants. Some districts around the country are offering all sorts of incentives to try to pull. So I'm aware that costs for us to recruit, to retain, to reward teachers are going to increase if we want to hire good teachers and keep good teachers in our district. which I hope we always say we can, I want to hear that increasing our software expense actually helps us, and not that we got caught in the loop of how software works. Once you're in, and somebody can then say, hey, guess what? It's 50% more this year. And you're going to have to eat that cost. So please help me out. And I don't care that it comes from $27,000 from Esser or not, because we already heard Esser is going out slowly.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I will say that, ultimately the board agreed to go with iSIMS in 2021, and since then we've been able to start the school year off at 97% fill rate, and so over the time we've had several applicants that's showed interest in Hamilton County Schools, and so currently our staff, when it comes to recruiting, we have 3 we call them talent acquisition managers for the district. When we're trying to source and hire over 5,500 employees. So with those 3 recruiters, they're asked to source, not only to source, to review the files, to interview, to make sure that we have the right talent. So within that, we currently have 70,000 applicants or people that's shown interest in our district, and so we're to a point now we need to have a mega campaign to see exactly if they're still interested in our district, and so the candidate ID does just that. So at one time they've shown interest in our district, and so now with this program it allows the program to have a hypersensitive recruiting, meaning text messaging, emailing, and all this is automated. These are folks that's in our system, they've already shown interest, and within that it's you click on I was interested in math, and so now when we have a math opening, when we post a math, that's going to trigger a text message, an email that goes all to the candidates that shown interest in being a math teacher, for example. So within that, that's allowing us to resource, and our hope is that's going to cut down on our costs of what we have to spend on our other websites like Indeed or LinkedIn, whatnot, is really trying to cultivate all the folks that shown interest in our district. You say that once you're in, you're in. Of course, we're not in. This is, I believe, a 2-year. And of course, the cost on just having our iSIMS to begin with. And I want to step back. It's so important that we use the technology the right way, because we think about, a couple years ago, our applicants, our candidates were unable to even interview or to apply using their mobile, right? That was so antiquated, right? And so now we're able to do that. We're really trying to streamline how you can apply to be a partner here at Hamilton County Schools, the customer experience, and so really trying to be creative. But we feel from our talent standpoint that being able to resource our 70,000 candidates, and so if you want to do the math, you can take off the 5,500, but again, that's well over 65,000 people that have shown interest in the past to work in Hamilton County Schools. Being able to do that, 3 people, and there's no way we can have that contact with 70,000 folks, on top of knowing that we're going to have to hire close to 450 teachers this school year.
So then to the follow-up to that, and you alluded to it, so that, because again, the other part of software is you can buy the most expensive software that has everything to help you, but if you don't equip your team to maximize all those different tools and skills of the software, you're buying a Rolodex, and you can put that on a piece of paper. So I just want to know that the investment in learning how to use that software is also being done.
Yes, sir, and that's a great point. I will just mention, actually yesterday we had us training with our hiring managers, in this case our principals, and because part of my goal for our department is to make sure we utilize iSIMS to its full capacity. So there's lots of, quote unquote bells and whistles where we can communicate with our hiring managers, from our business partners to our hiring managers, know, hey, where are we at with, I've made a request to hire, right? And our goal inside internally is to make sure that we contact our candidates within 48 hours. In order to do that, we need to make sure that we have programs in place that's sourcing those other candidates. And so, and then the onboarding process, but ultimately we've trained our principals. We've developed a toolkit to really walk them through the process of not only interviewing, recruiting, but when you make a decision or a recommendation. We need to follow up with those other candidates because, you know, a month from now, we might need your number 2, right? And so making sure that all of our hiring managers is using the technologies that's available to us where they can, you know, the system sends automated emails thanking them for their interest in Hamilton County schools. And so with Candidate ID, which is new to ISIMS, right? They acquired the piece, so it was not available 2 years ago. But again, allowing a system in place that's going to continue to recruit, marketing, texting all those candidates on top of taking care of what's in front of us. So.
Okay, Ben? No? I was going to say you don't. Okay, Joe?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I was trying to figure out haven't been able to get logged on to my meeting electronically, so I was trying to figure that out. A couple items here. The first was the University High School request for approval. So tell me how this is different. Is Blake here? Freeman? That's okay. Whoever can answer it. How this is different, how it does differ, or is a different pathway from the dual enrollment agreements that we currently have with like Chattanooga State and things like that.
The primary difference is that it's sitting on a 4-year campus, and so one of the things that we're really trying to solve for is the notion that we can, when we actively put the kids on the campus early, that they continue. So you're getting that year 2 to year 3 bridge for the kids. The other thing is that they remain a part of their home school, so they still get to stay connected to the activities at their home school, which is unique to that of collegiate high. You know, collegiate high it's an
Right.
entirely different piece. So those are the big pieces, and then of course we provide the teachers that are on campus. So you've got that small school piece where they're doing a bunch of their classes on the UTC campus and going out for some. But they still have that cohorted experience, so it's kind of a school within that larger university.
Right,
as
so
well.
they're going to provide space.
They're providing unique space.
And
yes.
we're providing faculty,
They're providing space, we're providing faculty.
and then they'll take college courses also
That's right,
as they branch out.
that's right.
All right, and then, so the second part of that, my inquiry on that was funding. So many times right now with the current agreement, like with Chattanooga State, most of those students are paying
Yep.
as they go. Is that how this is going to operate? It's going to be opportunity for students maybe to get some grant funding to cover tuition? How's that work?
Yeah, we've got a few different funding streams, a lot of grant dollars coming in. We've negotiated the cost of this with UTC and really asked them to bring their expenses down so that we can cover that. You know, the state with their whole push for some of these college access pieces, there's dollars flowing in that direction. And Dr. Robertson has talked about us being almost to zero. The things that we're still negotiating are things like parking passes. You know, they're not the actual cost of the course. We're trying to make it really a zero sum. And so that's a part of it. But it's grant funding and getting UTC to lower.
So one issue that we've run into at Chattanooga State, and I think sometimes folks don't always think about this, but so whether it be the STEM students on our campus or the collegiate high students on our campus, so for example, when they come to our physical education department, because neither one of those schools are going to have PE faculty, right? So they're taking those classes from us. If it's a lecture style class, even if it's an activity course, but it has a textbook, you know, how do they go about covering textbook? And so what's happened is that the STEM school or collegiate high would have, you know, a classroom set or maybe enough books to cover 2 sections, which is good. I guess the school system either made that purchase but they hand the student a book for, you know, that course and they take it back up. But yet then some of those books, they don't necessarily update the text as often as the college is going to update the text, you know. So for example, last spring I'm teaching one of those courses and I've moved on almost 2 editions, right, from the text that those students have available to them. So anyway, that kind of, I mean, you know, for the most part, it's the same content. Obviously, updates through the content, but it does create a little bit of just heartache when you talk about as an instructor teaching the course, and so just things like that. you guys thought about that at all as far as the textbooks go and things like that? Because again, you're going to provide, the district's going to provide that material for what's going on in there, as you say, school within a school, but then when they go to venture out, if they're not making that purchase for instructional material, you know, what's that look like? And I'm quite certain that those four-year schools are updating material probably at a little quicker pace than we are.
There is a line item in the budget that Grant has presented that includes this. But I think what you're really speaking to is, I certainly acknowledge that there's going to be things that we can't anticipate that may come, you know, at an expense that we don't know of today. I think that what I would speak to is that the confidence we have in the partnership with UTC. They've been really, really a positive partner with us, and so we're hopeful that as we continue to have those conversations, they know our goal is zero out of the kids' pockets. They're committed to that same goal, and so it's a lot of that dialogue back and forth, making sure we're making the same commitments and staying invested in the same ways.
All right, good deal. And then lastly, I didn't know if anyone else had a comment or question about the bid process for Tyner. As I was reading through this, I saw something about the deductive landscape alternate number 3. Is that in reference to landscaping at the campus?
Yeah, so Justin Wood and Jerry Isaacson from MBI are here. Can you guys come up?
Joe?
Hey.
This is Jerry Isaacson, MBI.
Hello.
So in the bid, we typically do deductive options, and that is a deductive alternate to scale back the landscaping in the courtyards, similar courtyards that you have at East Hamilton Middle.
Yeah.
So I just basically scaled that back and grassing an area. I think the hardscapes stay. Or is it just a grassed area? Just a grassed area. Yeah.
Kurt, so were you asking where that was?
So what's gonna be there if it's not gonna be any, what's gonna be there? It's not gonna be mud, right?
No, it'll just be a grassy courtyard.
And then we'll have to turn around and raise funding to landscape it?
It's, instead of being a hardscape, so like if you go and you've got, instead of like stacked stone throughout, it is just grass
grass.
replaces that stone.
So the reason I brought that up, and Justin, I don't know if you'll remember this or not, but back when we had the planning for East Hamilton Middle, one of the things that I brought up, I remember I said it to, I don't know if Jerry was there or not that day, but I know Ronnie was there that day. And one of the things that I brought up, just from years of experience, as they showed the plan, you had all this really nice landscaping. And what I said to Ronnie was, you know, that looks really nice, but the best it's ever going to look is the day you guys punch out. Because we don't pay people to trim bushes and do landscaping and plant perennial plants and all that. And so what we talked about that day was, I said, hey, look, please, whatever you do, whatever landscaping you're going to put around the building, make it as much inorganic as you can, because there's not going to be anybody there to maintain that.
Right.
There's just not. And I think they did a really good job. And there's a lot of rock. But again, at the end of the day,
Well, then I want rock.
if it's
I don't
not
want
not
grass.
cutting, all the school system, you know, contracts for is cutting grass and weed eating and edging. So that's why I was asking. I want to just make sure. And you guys may have a different opinion, but I'm just telling you, my years around schools, unless you've got somebody, a dedicated faculty member or somebody there who really, at East Ridge High School almost 30 years ago, we had somebody who ran a hospitality committee and took care of the front of the school, and she was unbelievable as our Spanish teacher, and she put seasonal plants out in front of the school, and it looked phenomenal, but it wasn't the school system doing that, because who we're paying to do that. Not that the school system doesn't care, but the contract's about keeping grass cut and weed eating. And so anyway, my suggestion was going to be, you know, again, I thought they did a phenomenal job at the middle school with understanding where the nooks and crannies were and where mowers weren't necessarily going to be able to get. And so don't spend time landscaping there that we know somebody's not going to be grooming that, and let's do something else that doesn't need nearly as much attention.
Right,
So,
and that was the intent. And it, just like we did at East Hamilton, greatly reduced the landscaping, the bushes and the bushes, trees, everything that's had to be trimmed, maintained,
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I just don't want to walk over there. I mean, I'm okay. We ain't got it. I don't have all that in my yard, so I'm not asking for that. But I don't want to walk over there and it's a slab of mud or
Right.
just a slab of grass. So the same little pretty rocks we got everywhere else, I want over there.
Okay.
Aesthetically.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, aesthetically, it will look maybe even better. All it's doing is if you think about a concrete patio, instead of having a concrete patio, you now have a grassy area that is
Yeah. I'm okay
easily
with that.
usable, and we can, it's under contract to Mr. Wingate's, Dr. Wingate's point about cutting and maintaining.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, my question was just, because I was gonna ask, I didn't know when this was gonna come up. My question was just to make sure that even though it wouldn't be, I know all the pretty azaleas and whatever else, pretty little skinny trees,
Right.
but that it wasn't gonna look like
Unlandscaped.
a project yard,
Right.
okay?
Right.
And so I just wanna make sure that they get the same pretty landscape, however it's gonna look, even if it's basic. I just don't want it to look like they going into the courtyard. Okay? You know what kind of courtyard I'm talking about. Okay.
Gotcha.
That's all I'm saying. Because I don't have all that in my house either, because I don't know how to maintain it. I kill stuff.
Yeah.
I don't have a green thumb, but I just want it to look nice.
Okay, Gary?
Well, I'm going to mention something to this, but I have a question on another part of the budget.
Okay.
But
Are we finished with that? Right there, we need to.
So going back to the Tyner project, the bid. So we know that the lowest bid came in at 96.2. We know what is recommended to take it to that amount. We see that there. In voting or being aware of this, if we have to vote on it and we get to 95 or whatever, we still know that initially we had budgeted for $78,000, which still means we have some money left. And I'm asking this because my phone was blowing up today because our friends in the nice print and video media did some articles. And so then they're calling me, which I'm fine with it. But I want to have answers for them. So
So we've been in conversations with county mayor's office around that additional funding. So to your point, we identified $33 million in ESSER 3. The county's government's identified $45 million from a bond fund. So there is a gap that's got to be made up, and they're working towards that. In any situation that I've been aware of in the past, the school board's always approved this first. County commission still is gonna have to come back with, after identifying the funds and approve it. So this is the initial step of you guys saying, we're good. County commission still gotta come back and work with county mayor's office to identify funding and approve it.
So for clarity for the public, and for our friends in the media, the Hamilton, and I feel pretty comfortable in saying this, minus our board chair and vice chair. The Hamilton County School Board still plans to operate in fidelity for what we have set forth with Tyner. I feel comfortable in saying that, right? And working with our governing body over at the county commission to figure out the best way to do that in fidelity. The plans are not off the table. We're just having to work through some hiccups and some challenges that have presented. Am I comfortable in saying that? So I want to go on record for saying that because I'm pretty sure everybody out there listening and waiting.
Right now, the conversation is essentially finding the funding gap between the 78 million and this bid.
Okay.
You guys are approving, saying we're good to move forward.
With this
County
bid.
Commission's got to work with county government to, find the additional funds.
Okay.
I think it's really important to also to recognize that the 33 million that the school system identified is, it's a one-time thing. It's the first time that I'm
Right.
aware of that school
And
board's
when-
been able to put that much money, so.
Right.
when is that capping out? Is it fall of 2023 or fall of 2024?
Right now, it's fall of '24.
Okay.
And
All right.
we're working to, with the state to get an extension on that, so.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, just for record again, we do not know a groundbreaking date because these are questions that were asked today. We do not currently know that because we are still in conversation as to how to see this through in fidelity. But the plan is not off the table. Tyner community. Media, please publish that.
I don't think they're here right now. I
Well,
don't see the
they're never here when they're supposed to be. But somebody make sure they hear that because that's very important because, they were, the words of the kids, they were shooketh today, okay?
So we just want to make sure they understand. They heard me.
Can I add one more comment to that?
Okay, this is about Tyner?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, as well with that, when we decided to pursue this, there's a whole process to get the bids in order, to get the designs, to get the idea. In that year of that process that it takes to probably put a lot of that together, I'm going to say a year, probably been less. We have also seen an increase significantly across the country and across the world of costs associated to construction specifically because just like we receive money, the whole country received money, which created a supply and demand reality, which is how economics works. So part of what I perceived when I read an article about this was that somehow we dropped the ball and now it's more expensive. It's not that the ball was dropped, it's that once we activated and said, let's move forward with this, it's not like there is some building that just gets dumped into every opportunity. People have to look at the land, figure out how it's going to be done, draw plans for it, present those plans, post an RFP, get bids, look at the bids, review the bids. All that process in order to do due diligence takes time, and every construction entity out there, developer in the country, can speak to the fact that the costs of construction have risen and will continue to rise if we don't act on this soon. So that's not to put pressure or strong arm, it's just a reality. Our $1 billion deferred maintenance study in no way is $1 billion anymore, with how 3 or 4 years ago, it was before I was here that the study was made, 3 or 4 years ago that was presented. So that's, again, as Carissa's, Ms. Jones is referring, we sometimes get accused of delaying when what we're doing is our job in due diligence, and the job of due diligence takes time, and time costs money in the environment in which we're in. So that's where, to me, that's where that difference comes in, and if we don't act now, that difference is only going to be greater down the road.
Okay, Faye? Is this
Has
about
the-
Tyner? This is about Tyner, okay.
Has the board received a drawing of the, a rendering of the drawing
Yeah.
for the school, new school? Okay, is it on the website?
I don't
believe so.
I have it, I can send it to you.
Okay, good. If you, I would like to see that. And I know that building materials went up exponentially, just what, 18 months ago or longer. But it's my understanding they have begun to come down. I'd like to know what area. Is it insulation, wood, roofing material that has escalated so much to make it 18 million more?
Probably one of the largest is concrete.
Concrete.
has continually to increase. I think also with the 33 million comes Davis-Bacon wages. It's federally funded, so that's another, not only wage, but additional paperwork, additional work for the contractor that they incorporate in. And the other is labor. I mean, there's a major labor shortage in the construction industry, where contractors, I think, are paying a premium to get that labor to meet a tight schedule. A tight schedule on an existing site. It's a tough job. So I think the combination of inflation, price increases, and labor shortages is what's put us here.
Okay, because I do agree that it's needed and we've got to find a way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary?
So mine's on 7D, 3B. And I understand the 3.8 million, for devices and that, but in there, a couple of the line items, there's a $100,000 innovation consultant fee. And who does that go to?
Say it again.
So we're on FY 2023, but it's 7D, 3B. Budget amendment details,
General operating amendments.
general operating amendments. And down below where it lists the 6th and 9th grade. So is this, okay. So down below the 6th and 9th grade, there's a innovative consultant fee and then a projected salary increase. I was just curious to whom those go to. The innovation fee is $100,000 and the projected salary increase is $168,650.
So these are just shifting some budgets around. So the $100,000 was actually in the budget, so we had it in a pooled amount of money. And so it's moving from that allocation line to innovation, and that's for Dynamo Studios. So that's a program. Probably not the best person to speak. I don't know. The Dynamo Studios.
I can speak to
Okay.
Dynamo
Yeah, so-
Studios.
Okay.
Yeah, so
but
it's already in the
this
budget,
is-
we're just
yeah,
shifting the budget lines around.
This is a middle school program that helps teach kids on how to use media and so on and so forth.
Right. And then the 168,000, that's, so we've got a pool from our vacancy savings, and that's shifting around to fund, I'm trying to think what that, so it's just shifting a request around for our contract for our student success planning. So it's just, again, those lines are just, again, we do that kind of several times during the year where we identify a funding need, so we reduce one budget and shift it to another budget line.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Faye, you have anything else? Okay. Gary, do you have anything else?
Oh, I'm sorry. We haven't hit the
How
board
about-
policies yet, right?
Okay, no. Larry, do you have anything?
I just have a general question on item 7D3A, on several of these federal programs. A lot of bonuses being paid to teachers. Some of the individuals receiving bonuses are at least one principal is at the district level. The others are named. I'm just kind of curious. What are these bonuses? What was the criteria for all these bonuses?
I think what you're looking at are the recruitment and retention bonuses that are coming from some of our principals in our highest need schools. I think that's what you're seeing.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
there's no way for us to tell
Yeah.
that unless we ask the question.
Sure.
This begs the other question, is that these are all appear to be federal program grants, which I understand, but gosh, it would be interesting to know the amount of, are these that are in this particular part of the disclosure of the budget to us, are these just for 1 year, or are these grants that are multi-year?
Yeah, so each year, the state pushes down money for our
Right.
priority schools, and it's money over money dependent on how many schools we have. And so each year, we have to write an action plan around that has to go through the state, the state approval process. There's all sorts of guidelines about how you can spend those federal dollars and so on. But yes, we have money year over year. How we choose to spend it are local decisions.
Okay, that leads me to my main question. I think it would be enlightening to know how many of these individuals who, over the last 10 years, say, started on federal grants and transitioned to the regular budget.
In terms of bonuses,
No, in terms of all the individuals indicated by these federal grants over the last, say, 10 or 12 years.
so you're asking.
And that leads me to the question of, we have fewer students in our school district today than we had when we unified in 1997. So it begs the question as to what has been the percentage growth in the administrators in this school district over those last 25 years.
every time we go through a budget, we break down percent that, when you say administration, I believe you're referring to central office, not necessarily school administrators.
No, I'm not talking about the basics of a principal and say two
Yeah,
assistant
so
principals.
we break that down. It's consistently been year over year around 4% of the budget. So every year when we present the budget, we'll show very clearly, what is school-based and what is not school-based. And the non-school-based is typically, around 4%, give or take.
And maybe the public is not aware, because every year the school district puts out a list of their top paid employees. But that basic salary doesn't even address the actual benefits that are included in those, nor does it include the support staff that is put in place to support all those administrators. So 4% a year, so you're saying it's okay that we have the same amount of students, but we've had a 100% growth in 25 times 4, a 100% growth in administrative staff.
I'm not following your math there at
Okay,
all.
well, we'll get together. I think it's an in-depth question
I
that
think,
you and I need to,
sure.
that I would like to speak with you about.
Absolutely, and as we go
Thank
into
you.
budget season, obviously all those things come up, and we'll get more detail there.
So to that, just, there will be a finance committee meeting sometime in January or February to address some of those issues as well.
Okay, I have one thing on board policy 4.208, the virtual education program. Not really anything so much about the policy, because I did call Scott about this, because I did have some teachers who do teach some of these classes contact me. And one of the biggest problems they had about the virtual education program is there's not a designated area in a lot of these schools for these kids to take these classes. And they say there's so many distractions. And I had to call Scott to ask him if we needed to put that in the policy, that they would have a designated area. And he said he thought it was an administrative issue and not one that probably needed to be in the policy. So, but I think that's something we need to look at, because some of the schools, they say, have so many distractions. The teacher can't hear the students can't hear the teacher. They get off task because there's so much confusion and stuff going on around them. I think that's something that we need to look at with this virtual education. I think wish that y'all would look into that.
Yes, thanks, I'll look into that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, do we have Gary?
And then the one question I have on board policy 4.206, it mentions everything, but it doesn't mention University High. Should we wait? It's a second and final read. So should we pull that and wait and then add University High into that?
It's probably a good idea. Scott?
Yeah. Or you could approve it and then amend it once you come online. I mean, what we've started doing is we're bringing the policies to the board for regular review, just so we don't have anything that's stale. But it's the pleasure of the administration and the board. You could either approve this and then amend it when University High comes online, or we could just tab it and amend it at a later date. It's exclusively the pleasure of the board on this.
So
Either one, I'm fine with.
you're fine with that?
Probably quicker to just approve it now
Just
and amend
approve
it
it and then
later.
amend it later. Okay. All right, good. Okay, is there anything else?
Madam Chair, if I could call your attention to something. Mr. Groen brought to our attention a typo, and I'm going to say that I don't know how you and I missed this.
Uh-oh.
After in policy 4402, after the time that we spent together in what I have called Rhonda's book club, if you will look on the second page, line 27, I'm sorry, line 57, there is a word missing that should read, the extent to which the content may be considered offensive to contemporary community standards. So thank you, Mr. Graham, for bringing our attention to that. But that was, in fact, what the board had approved. It just, for whatever reason, it didn't make it into this edit. And so I've mentioned it to Shannon and the superintendent. And so that's going to be fixed. And since the board's already acted on it, I don't think you need to amend the policy. That's actually the way the policy as approved is supposed to read.
Okay. I think I've read it so many times, I just.
I know.
Okay.
And how I missed it on this agenda is beyond me. But I guess I got tired of looking at it.
So when we approve it, this change will be in there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Mrs. Thurman,
Oh,
can I?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right, I just turned mine on. Mr. Bennett, there's one other line in there that's gonna need a little verbiage change. It's just grammar, but I still can't pull mine up yet to see it, so I'll bring it back. I'll find it.
Okay.
And it, not to slow down the meeting letter, but just to show you, I was reading that same policy, there was something else there. I know that stings too, doesn't it?
Do what?
I'm just kidding. No, I don't want to scroll through it. I'll look.
Okay.
I figure we're going to take a short break right before we start our next one. I'll find it and I'll get with him later. I'm not going to stop the meeting for it, but just give me a heads up.
Okay. Is there
And to
any-
bust his shop.
Okay, is there anything else? Okay, then I say that, I guess that we will stop this meeting and we go into executive session.
It doesn't make any difference.
Well, no, not necessarily.
However you all want to do it. It's your choice. If you want to go in.
Because, okay, it's just 4 minutes. You want to just wait?
It's 4 minutes. Let's go ahead and adjourn to executive session.
Okay.
And then we'll start the meeting.
Okay, let's go ahead and adjourn to the executive session then. Okay.
Yeah, let's do
You
this.
did most of it.
Well,